Wes, have you been given an indication as to what life might look like for your industry once that threshold is met in the state?
Well, look, restaurant and catering has made a submission to the New South Wales government, and we also are working with other industries in the accommodation and food service industry to get the best possible outcome from the New South Wales government in any future roadmap that we do hope is released next week. Look, we called for reasonable density restrictions and reasonable caps for hospitality businesses once we reach that 70% threshold, because our industry has been the hardest hit through the entire pandemic, and we just cannot survive a spring and early summer with just a few patrons.
You've mentioned that the RCA has joined with other hospitality and tourism bodies. How are you preparing?
Oh, look, ultimately, we've just made a submission on behalf of the entire group and our own submission. And ultimately, we are working together with the New South Wales government to hopefully come up with a roadmap that is sensible for the entire hospitality industry and will get us open as fast as possible with as many customers as possible and as few restrictions is as safe for health reasons.
It's becoming more and more apparent that it really is based on vaccination. In fact, Gladys Berejiklian said this week to businesses, dust off your COVID safety plans, make sure staff are vaccinated. How has the vaccine message been received industry-wide?
Well, look, the hospitality industry, as I said, has been the hardest hit. In New South Wales alone, it costs $228 million a week in lost bookings and events through the lockdowns, which is devastating to the industry. They are definitely preparing for a reopening, hopefully mid to late October. Certainly many have told us that they are beginning to take bookings and that they see light at the end of the tunnel. And it will be very important that New South Wales and the country pushes forward to get the jab and get fully vaccinated so that we can get the industry reopened as fast as possible.
Absolutely. It's good to hear that there is some optimism in the air amongst everything that's happening. But just in terms of the vaccine, though, how will businesses tackle it? Because by all accounts, opening up really is hinging on staff and patrons being fully vaccinated.
So what we expect is that the Service New South Wales app will have the functionality of attaching to Services Australia to show your vaccine status. That's certainly what we've been indicated, and we expect that that will then create that barrier getting into businesses that will require you to have been double jabbed, and it will be that that QR code process that we have had in New South Wales now for nearly a year.
You mentioned domestic business as well. This week, WA and Queensland indicated that they potentially won't be following National Cabinet's plan to open up at 80% threshold. How will this have an impact on domestic business?
Well, look, ultimately, the four-step federal plan is very clear and calls for a reopening of state borders at that 80% threshold. And it certainly will be disappointing if some states decide not to reopen. Ultimately, living with COVID is living with cases in the community and managing the hospitalizations, the severe disease, ICU, and mortality. And so, the sooner that Australia understands that we need to all get the jab and live with COVID so that we can get international borders reopened and state borders reopened and get back to being Australians, the sooner the better.